Okay, we're going to get started. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CSIS. This is the panel on strengthening workforce and human capital in Ukraine. My name is Romina Bandura. I'm a senior fellow here at CSIS on the Project on Prosperity and Development, and I'll be your moderator today. We have gathered a very distinguished set of speakers and experts on this topic. And when we started the conversation with our speakers, we wanted this discussion to be about the future of Ukraine. And this morning we've heard, many good things, many interesting things about Reconstruction. But I think the future of Ukraine lies in its people, in its talent, in its human capital. And what we want to discuss today is really solutions to, Ukraine has a lot of challenges right now in the labor market, but we want to find ways to amplify some of the programs that are taking place right now in Ukraine. What are some short-term strategies to bring people to the labor force? Historically, women have been, kind of left out of the workforce. Even before the war, a lot of young people were leaving Ukraine for better economic opportunities. So, Ukraine has a lot of talent. We want to capitalize that talent. We want to build it. And so let's look into the future and let's find some solutions. So that's kind of the spirit of this discussion. I had a boss that once told me, Romina, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. So you probably have heard that in your careers as well. So I'm going to stop now and introduce briefly our panelists, and I'm going to ask them to just say, just 1 or 2 minutes about what they do and how this topic of workforce ties with their current position. So to my left is Yana Chapailo. She's the director of the Veterans Resource Center at Kiev Mohila Foundation. Thank you, Yana, for coming. To the left of Yana is Taras Panasenko. Taras is the CEO and founder of Aurora Retail Chain. He employs a lot of people, and I believe you founded your company in 2011?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, wonderful. So welcome, Taras. Next to Taras is Darina Marchak. She's First Deputy Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine, and Darina is going to talk a little bit about, the new strategies and policies that you're looking at. And then we have next to Darina Maria Demecki. She's a principal at Deloitte US. So Deloitte has a huge presence as well in Ukraine, employs people. So, what better way, to strengthen human capital by employing people. And then last but not least is, I would say, thought leader, needs no introduction. Timofey Milovanov, he's the president of Kyiv School of Economics. And so, thank you, Timofey, for being here. So I'll just kick off we have a lot of questions. But before I start with the questions, I wanted to give you, each of you, like 1 or 2 minutes to just tell us a little bit like what you're doing, and how this topic of workforce applies to your job. So I'll start with you, Yana.
Hi, thank you so much, Romina. I guess women first, but we are not afraid of that, right? I'm Yana Chapailo. I represent here National University of Kyiv Mohila Academy. We recently developed and launched a Veterans Resource Center, and we call it Ukrainian Defenders Leadership Center. So we believe, as we are talking about the solutions, not problems. We all know the problems that Ukraine face. One of the problems is having Russia at our border and in our country, but I'm not going to talk about that because we are all over the news for over 2.5 years and for over 11 years, to be honest, and to be fair. However, universities in Ukraine and Kyiv-Mohyla Academy specifically, and I'm proud to also to be an alum of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, universities in Ukraine have been taking the responsibility, I guess, of educating future generations, our generations, people that will be working towards finding solutions, right? We thought a lot about the way that we as a university can answer to the need to support veterans, to support those who were defending us, who took the responsibility of saving our country, saving our independence. And we are grateful, but gratefulness should be applied, should be, put into some frames, not only words, but deeds. And as Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, founded in 1615 and is known for its deeds, last year we put together our brain, our ideas, and came up with the plan to empower those who were not afraid to take charge and to support them in coming back to the labor market, taking their responsibility back to their hands, developing ideas, supporting and lobbying ideas to work further to develop Ukraine. I'm not sure if it's 2 minutes. I will stop here because I can continue, but yeah, that's me for now. Thank you.
Great.
And thank you for having me here.
Of course. Thank you. And Taras, please.
Taras Panasenko. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aurora Retail Chain. And we are the largest retail chain in Ukraine in terms of stores quantity. And we started in 2011, and we open a new store every 18 hours this year. So last year it was every 14 hours. So even though we have a full-scale invasion of Russians, but we've not stopped, and we're moving on. And we employ more than 1,400 employees. Sorry. 14,000, yes. 14,000, yes. And last year we created 3,000 new jobs, and this year is going to be the same. And the last year, in October 2023, we entered Romanian market. So it's very unusual for Ukrainian retailers. So we're actually the first retailer who entered Romanian market, European Union market, and now we are expanding there, and by the end of the year we're going to have something like more than 40 stores in Romania, and then moving in other European Union countries. We attracted significant investments from Horizon Capital in 2021, and it's boosted our business, but also it's smart money. So this is one of the reasons for such fast growing. And of course we are very, let's say, transparent company and high ethical company, because we audited by KPMG. Yeah. Yeah, but maybe it's better for Deloitte.
Doing business.
Yeah, to do business, not to do audits.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Minister?
Dear all, thanks for inviting me for participation. I have two angles of working with human capital. First one is demographic policy is my sphere of responsibility, and our ministry is responsible for developing demographic policy. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, for the last 10 years, we didn't have any vision of demographic development, and we now have a lot of outcomes or negative outcomes of that absence of the vision. That is why for the last year and a half we have developed the new vision based on which takes into account the current war and all those negative demographic trends that we have, but also that targets the development of the demographic resilience for Ukraine. Tomorrow, I hope that the strategy will be approved by our government, and since then it will become the to-do list for all the ministries and stakeholders, governmental stakeholders. But it's only one part of the issue. We understand that demography is the second, meets labor market very closely. And unfortunately, we understand that according to the Ministry of Economy assessment, we will have around 4.5 million people as deficit in the labor market in the nearest future, and the International Labour Organization tells that we will have around like 8 million people, 8.6 million people as deficit in 10 years perspective. And that is why we look at the demographic strategy as a tool to meet our labor market deficit needs and how we will match all those policies. And of course, from the social policy point of view, we are the mirror of the labor market situation in Ukraine, because the more people are economically independent from the state, the higher their earnings are, the lower beneficiaries as the ministry we have, and we see our prior goal as to ensure that all Ukrainians that can work, they need to work, and those Ukrainians that cannot work for some reason already, they need to have a decent life in our countries, and our task is to ensure that they have the decent life. That is why these are two angles how we work with the labor, the human capital. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Maria, I know you recently launched a good report. Tell us a little bit also about that.
Yes, thank you. First, thank you for inviting me. I'm very humbled to be here with my esteemed panel members. So my name is Maria Demecca. I've been working as a leader in workforce development for Deloitte. I'm a principal in our workforce development practice. I've been working in workforce development for the past 20-ish years globally, across Africa, Europe, South America, as well as domestically as well. So we have looked at all different types of approaches to workforce development and human capital solutions, and more recently focusing on technology and AI components to it, and how can you look at technology and AI either to augment the workforce in some cases or to boost productivity as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we recently built a tool that analyzes skills that are needed in the market and maps it to the existing skill sets and does an assessment of where those gaps are, and then helps come up with solutions on how to fill those gaps, and also developed some AI solutions on individual training, so how to actually reskill someone using AI as a sort of prompt, focusing on where their gaps are individually. So excited to talk to you about that today. We were also together with a few of my colleagues at the URC in Berlin, Germany a few months ago, and we had the opportunity to get a room full together and actually work through and think through some of the biggest challenges around human capital. So as was mentioned, we just issued a report, just came out 2 days ago or so, got approved. So I'm one of the main authors of that. You have two other of the authors here as well. And so we happy to share that report with folks. We can email it out if you're interested. I just gave my last copy away, but I'm sure we have a few floating around. And then lastly, I'll say, as mentioned, Deloitte is in Ukraine, has been in Ukraine for the last 20-ish years. We have an office there. We have hundreds and hundreds of employees there. So while we are both sort of trying to help work and problem solve, we also face many of the challenges that we're going to talk about today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. Timothy?
Okay, so I think we need to upskill a lot of people or reskill a lot of people as a result of the war. There is still sexism and discrimination. For example, a female student of a master program in engineering that we just opened at the Kiev School of Economics, in her motivation letter has written that I thought I would never go to a graduate school in engineering because I have been tired of this sexism, misogyny, and the statements from the faculty that you girl, just stay there in the back and let the engineers talk. And once we open the engineering program, she said in her letter, that's why I want to come to the Kiev School of Economics, because I think it's a very different environment. We are partnering with ETH Zurich, and during this trip, I'm also exploring partnership with MIT Engineering and Olin College of Engineering and some other institutions. We currently have, even though we're still called Kiev School of Economics, KSC, we actually, this year, we just opened engineering programs, and in our engineering programs, we have more students than we have in all of our master economics programs, just in 1 year. And the standardized scores are the highest in the market. That shows that there is a gap and a demand for people to be trained in real sector professions. We're also working on blue-collar professions. We just secured, or potentially securing, hopefully the board will approve that, funding to do a private vocational training, to move fast and get welders and operators of machine building, and even cooks and chefs trained, because the demand is huge. So these are two things that we are going to for. Veterans and women are a significantly underexplored part, but we also will have to work with open our markets, liberalize our markets, and work with immigrants, and also work with global partners so that people can benefit from the knowledge transfer. So this is what I would like to outline as the opportunities and the needs for the market, because the market is distressed both by the war mobilization and by refugees outflow of the labor market. Plus there is a serious PTSD issue at the labor market. So trauma is an issue, and the key is to turn this trauma from PTSD into PTG, post-traumatic growth. The Kiev School of Economics is actually experiencing in real time this post-traumatic growth. We have grown over 10x just during the war, and I think there are lessons to be learned from that, how other organizations can do that, and our job is to ensure that Ukraine moves more into PTG direction than PTSD direction. Thank you.
Wonderful. So let's talk about that's a great way to start our conversation. I know there's a lot of people that stayed in Ukraine. Obviously, there were a lot of people that were displaced. We have veterans with disabilities, which was mentioned. We have women who have been traditionally excluded from the labor market, or from professions that are more like male dominated, let's say. How do we better equip them to really realize their potential, and for them to contribute to the economy and to their, a job is not just an income, but it's also like a social policy, and also a way to connect with society. So what are your thoughts of what to do with people that have stayed to maximize their potential? So maybe I'll start with you, and or you can jump in, but maybe let's go in order. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so first of all, current unemployment rate in Ukraine is something like 14%, so it's quite high. And there are different reasons for that, so probably I'm not an expert in this area, but I have an assumption that some people, they don't fit to the market, right? Other people there don't want to be employed officially because it's a reason to be subscripted, and then so they work, let's say, in gray market. And of course, the third reason is actually gray market, because gray market pay them cash, and that's why they are not officially employed. And but let's get back to how can we reskill, how can we, let's say, change these gender stereotypes and what we do actually in Aurora. So, for example, we have several women who are truck drivers. And this is very unusual. We have special trainings internally for ladies who would like to become a truck driver, because traditionally in Ukraine, for example, trolley bus majority drivers of trolley bus are actually women, right? So why is this so different from trucks? Because modern truck you don't need a lot of strength, or I don't know, so because it's very easy to drive. And also in our distribution centers, reach truck drivers or forklift drivers are primarily women so far, and 2 years ago it was absolutely different. So this gender biases, we try to erase that and reskill, and also we cooperate with Ministry of Economy. Now they conduct very good program along with USAID. It's a reskill program, it's called like that, and it's reformation of centers of vocational education. And we are, for example, from Soviet Union, it was, it's a heritage from Soviet Union. It was never been efficient, and now Ministry of Economy tried to rethink that and to involve real business in that and make it really efficient for the business, because a lot of people need to be, let's say, retrained, reskilled. For example, now industry which is booming currently, this is drone industry, meal tech, and as Timothy said, engineering and other market demand for, I mean labor demand is booming right now, and there is a huge shortage of that. So these reskilled centers could be very beneficial. And real business, so we will be sponsor for that, and going to create a supervisory board for that, so it's going to be a collaboration. And that's what we currently do, so probably there are a lot of different experience. Yeah, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, should I join? Thank you. I guess I will start, well, Timothy mentioned post-traumatic growth, and this is something that we do see in Ukraine. Fortunately, I would start with with businesses and actually in veterans. So we do have stigma. We do have stigma in Ukraine about, and I would just start with saying that not all veterans have PTSD, and PTSD is not something that only veterans have. We have to be very, cautious about putting stigma on people. Trauma is something that we carry. Obviously, Ukraine as a society carries a huge amount of trauma, starting from the Holodomor and the Second World War, and I mean, you name it, every century, every decade has something.
Intergenerational trauma.
Absolutely. Right now, we are fighting for our existence, and this is also it. But stigma is something that we as a society and we as a university, as a Veterans Center, are trying to, to explain, to bring, maybe to ease people so they can understand better how to work with veterans. Because veterans, first of all, they are human beings. They used to be civilians. We are not talking about the professional army in Ukraine. We're talking about the civilians who used to be managers, who used to be IT specialists. A friend of mine who volunteered and serves in the army, he was an education manager. He worked in an international organization. So there's an amount of people who were taking charge and living their lives and leading their professions, who are now coming back to the market. What businesses, I guess, so to my next point, just last week we had a round table with the HRs of one of the biggest businesses in Ukraine. Aurora, unfortunately, was not there. You had your meeting of your own because we reached out to you. So that's kind of, that we're back together, here. What we heard a lot from businesses' perspective is that several years ago, before the full-scale war, businesses were able to choose who to hire. Now people are choosing where to go because the shortage of people is imminent. You can see it, you can see people, also the productiveness of people, and let's be honest, we don't sleep normally. We cannot take a break from the war. We cannot go on vacation. There is also that we also need to keep in mind. So what we've talked about a lot about that during that roundtable was the trauma-informed management is something that businesses need to work with, to think about, to implement, on how to treat your co-workers with the understanding, respect, and support, because this is something that we cannot solve in a year. We will be working with the same people in 10 years. Veterans who are now 25, in 30 years, they will be 55. They will be still active members of the labor market. So this is not an issue that can be resolved in a minute. The second point is that veterans are very sensitive towards the issue of transparency. So this is again something that is very important to understand. The only businesses who work, who are transparent can count on people to hire those people, and not only businesses, but actually the whole labor market. Transparency is very important right now because, well, people are paying with their health, they're paying with their life to fight for the country. So they expect the country to change and be transparent, be fair, etc., etc. And the third, I guess, point here is that we are now thinking about a greater good. This is something that was not that, imminent several years ago, but now people care about the jobs that they do, especially veterans. They need to feel that they're doing something important, that they're doing something that changes future, that their impact changes the whole situation. As a Veterans Defenders, Leadership Defender Center, we are launching several programs right now on leadership, on career orientation, on career support for those who are looking for the ways to, change their career path, find their new selves. And as a market, we need to be open to people making choices and supporting people in those choices. So I guess there is a lot to be done here, and I'm sure that this is not a conversation that ends this year or in the next 5 years. Again, we still have veterans of the Second World War, right? So that was what, 80, 90, I'm sorry, just cannot tell you the exact number, but I mean, that's the decades of working with trauma, of working with people, of hiring people, and making sure that these people are not lost in the context of everything that is changing so fast.
Thank you, Jana. How are you looking into this issue from the government perspective?
I think that we see a lot of opportunities how to support our people and activate them to the labor market. Timothy referred to the need to work with immigrants from other countries. We understand that we will work with immigrants, and we need to build the sound immigration policy, because otherwise it will be very difficult to tackle with all the issues on the labor market. But first, for us, it's of extreme importance to activate the labor market all Ukrainians that could work. According to our minimum, very conservative estimates, we have at least 2 million people within Ukraine that could be activated to the labor market, and we strongly believe that this investment into these people will be much lower than investment into working with foreign migrants. We have the developed vision how to work with activating these people. So first, for example, one of the first challenges that Taras has referred to is mismatch of competences on the labor market. For example, we have internally displaced person from Ugledar, which is now under the permanent fire, and this person is a miner. He moves to some rural village location in safer western Ukraine, but there is no mine in this western Ukraine, and the person has not possibility to get a job and needs to be retrained or reskilled. But in Chervonograd and Lviv, the same Lviv Oblast, there are mines which have deficit for miners. And we understand that one of the major issues is to ensure the efficient exchange of information between all stakeholders that will let us understand not only how the supply and demand on the labor market look like, but also what are the local, regional differences in this supply and demand, and will help us to support those people who could be relocated to the nearest Gramada and get the good job there. The second very important issue is, of course, upskilling, reskilling, but we have a lot of specialists on that here. I will not talk on that. The third very important issue that we need to tackle, and we are working on it right now, is different assistive technologies. We are talking about people with disabilities, veterans, but not only veterans. We have huge amount of people, youngsters that are now wounded due to the bomb shelling, rocket missile attacks, and we are developing very fastly the sector of prosthetics. And we believe that when the war is over, Ukraine will be one of the major worldwide leaders for prosthetics technologies. But it's not only about prosthetics, it's about the provision of all relevant services for the person, starting from accommodation of the houses and apartments, and working with accommodation of the workplaces. The question is about technologies, and the question is about service providers who could help in a standardized, certified way. And finally, we understand that a lot of Ukrainians are now deprived of possibility of work due to the need to take care about their relatives. First of all, the question is about women. Women in the regions that are close to the front line, where kindergartens are closed and schools are mostly working online only. Or, for example, those families that have veterans with different and difficult injuries, and that are, stick to their relatives. In US, in Japan, in many developed countries, you have the term care economy. In Ukraine, we do not have the care economy yet, but we understand and we put it as a strong target for the government to develop the care economy, to meet on the first hand the needs of our citizens, and to make the possibility for their relatives to go for a job, and to create a huge, enormous possibilities for SME development in local gramadas, because care economy is always about SME development. Thanks.
Thank you. Maria, a lot of skills mismatch was mentioned, and I know you did a skills assessment. What is your take on reskilling and really equipping the people of Ukraine to take on new jobs?
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I'll say is I think the the steps are in place. I'm excited to see the workforce vision, because I think that will define a lot of sort of what is the focus, and that's the first step to say what does Ukraine want to be from a labor perspective, from a workforce perspective, both in the short term to confirm just security and personal health and security, but also in the long term for the next generation, for the generation that's now in elementary, kindergarten, who is going through quite a challenging time, both in terms of just physical security, but also ability to learn, gaps in learning because of COVID, because of the war. So looking both short-term and long-term is going to be critical. And also I think establishing that long-term vision is going to also build confidence for the private sector to come in and be able to say, this is where we can contribute, this is where we can build our market. And so that's going to be critical to have KPIs around that and to share progress outwardly and communicate on it. In terms of reskilling in particular, I think the biggest thing right now on reskilling is really being innovative. There are so many things that are happening globally that are going to require reskilling all around the world, and there's a lot of innovations that are happening both with technology, with remote work. As mentioned, the population that is outside, the diaspora population, ways that we can tap into that and start remote work with potentially commitments to move back to the country to work, but looking at sort of what are different ways to work. So for a population that does have the skills, sort of find that population and see how can we engage them in a different way. And then in reskilling, I think one thing we haven't hit on too much is the private sector. We've talked about sort of bringing them in, but they are also machines for reskilling. And once the sort of standards are set, certifications and things like that, enticing the private sector to come back and use some of the technologies they have. I mean, I talked a little bit about AI. Challenge with AI is it's expensive. It's expensive to get the licensing for the off-the-shelf software that exists, or expensive to build. But if you can bring in those multinational companies that already have that, you can leverage that to reskill the population on the relevant topics. Another thing I would say on the diaspora fund, some things that other countries are doing are investment funds. So you talked a bit about the care economy and sort of how families both in Ukraine and outside need to care for their elders, care for their family members, looking at ways to do that in a way that is a fund that is created and then can be used either by the government or by non-for-profits, and sort of voting on sort of how that gets used and why, and provide sort of more oversight of that funding and of that money has been a successful model in other places as well. The other thing around, we've talked a little bit around accessibility. I think while this is a huge challenge, it's also a huge opportunity to build a society that is more equitable, both from the gender perspective and looking at what are the components that women, for example, that mothers need. There is a whole infrastructure that a mother needs to come back to the workplace, and having that child care in place, having that health system in place is all part of that infrastructure. In our paper, we refer to a framework called the FRESH framework that hits on all of those different areas that support the workforce. But looking at energy, obviously, is an area that's going to need to be rebuilt, looking at how do we create jobs in the green energy space, how do we build it in a way that is green and going to be sustainable. The other thing we've talked about, PTSD and PTG, I really like that term. Looking at as we build the infrastructure, we heard from someone a few days ago, even the drying machines in bathrooms, that can cause people to have PTSD reactions because of the noise. Looking at things like that, building the infrastructure back in a way that is going to create equities across the workforce is going to be critical. One other component too, we talked a little bit about small and medium enterprises. I think one of the critical needs that they've had is having networks and access to other entrepreneurs and other SMEs, both in country and outside of country, and gaining access to consumers of their goods or products. So building those platforms, making sure those platforms are in place and are accessible and are secure as well. I think cybersecurity is going to be a critical piece to all of this, critical dimension to all of this. And then also as sort of medium and large size companies grow, looking at, are there ways to look at other equitable models like employee-owned businesses. That's a trend that is taking off many places to really start to minimize the gap in wealth, and taking a look at that and seeing what are some of the possibilities around employee-owned companies could be a very interesting model for Ukraine as it looks towards the next generation as well. I'll pause there.
Timofey, thank you, Maria. I'll turn to you, Timofey, now for your thoughts on, how do we better use our population in Ukraine.
Okay, so I want to talk about issues with integrating veterans, so people who are coming back. I think we're not talking about suicide and mental health and aggression and murders coming from people who are demobilized or becoming veterans. That's a real issue already in Ukraine, and we have to become, face it with eyes wide open. Because they have weapons, they are professional, it's a lot of people. Russia will have the very same issue, Europe will have as a result of this issue, and we have to start addressing it now, okay? So second one is the employers are unprepared. Employers have no idea how to deal with veterans coming from the war. They are not trained, they don't know the issues, they are not in the context, they don't know how to speak. That has to become a national program. Then there is veterans' anger and current military anger at the rest of the society, because I'm, for example, speaking to you here while someone, another professor, is currently being killed in Ukraine in trenches. So yes, there is no justice in the war, but there is a question of how those people feel. And I have given it some thought, and in the end I think there is no other equitable way to move forward except lottery on mobilization. Fundamentally, there are all these arguments about that for the economy, it would be very, very important to keep people, high human capital people in, safe. But that's very unfair, because for the most of the history of humankind, we lived in caves. And we live so much better now, including in every corner of the world. So why is it that some people sacrifice their lives and others don't? So that question has to be addressed by our society heads on. That creates social frictions and will create frictions post-war. And then there is transitional justice and guilt. We talk a lot about transitional justice, but no one talks about transitional guilt. There is guilt on both sides. Veterans and military, for example, might have guilt with respect to their families, to their children. Civilians will have and have already guilt, as you might sense, with respect to military. So those issues have to be handled. But we are speaking here as if the war has been over. It's not even clear how it will be over. Look at today's political discussions in this country and elsewhere, where both sides are now trying to move out of the support for Ukraine for maybe some reasons which are more political than maybe rational. But I understand the context here, at least to the extent I can, of the population, of the voters, and that all will have implications for the future of security in Europe. How this war will end, when will it end, on which conditions will it end? Those are going to be important questions and important answers to be able to talk about the labor markets and human capital. So we actually have ongoing war, and we need to be talking about maintaining human capital amidst crisis right now, not maintaining human capital post-war. And I think we also need to continue to be talking about preventing immigration and brain drain and balancing tragedy with resilience in Ukraine. I talked about post-traumatic growth, but I think the only way to get it, we need to focus on purpose-driven survival and success. So the solution to what Ukraine is facing is to give meaning to life, purpose. Without purpose, organizations will die out. They will lose the labor force. They will not be able to help people overcome the adversity. And we also need to build support networks of friends and activities. And finally, we need to structure everything in terms of learned optimism and sizable successes, which are a very specific technique within organizations which show that despite the extremely hostile adversarial environment, you still can thrive and function normally, and you can succeed. But that has to be demonstrated to people, to human capital, to humans, that life is possible during the war, life is possible after war, and you have to manage attention of people to focus on purpose of survival and success rather than on the tragedy of the war. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. You raised, very important issues, and you used the term social friction. There are a lot of people that stayed in Ukraine, but there are a lot of people that also left, right? And that also creates social frictions. I myself am from, my parents left Ukraine a long time ago, and there's that, that guilt, no, of leaving the country. And so my question to the panelists is, how do we incentivize people that left either now due to the war or, long history of diaspora in, Canada, United States, I'm from Argentina. So how do we incentivize those people to come back to Ukraine? And then, I want to raise the issue that Darina raised about, is migration some kind of, outside Ukrainians, a solution? Is it feasible? Is it something that the society would accept? So, yes, outside, how do we bring Ukrainians back?
I will leave this answer to my colleagues here, but I just want, the first and foremost is people will come back when it's safe. And let's be honest, when the rockets are hitting your apartment buildings, when we are looking at Kharkiv that is being bombed, that is being destroyed, when we are looking in Kyiv, when I'm sitting in the office 1 minute, and then Okhmadit is being destroyed and people are dead on the streets, and that's like, 15 minutes walk from my office building, and that could have been me. That's kind of the incentive here. And I know that we're not talking about the military part here. We're talking about the workforce, and we're looking for the answers. But the answer is if Ukraine is safe, that is one of the most important conditions for people to be able to come back home, for women to be able to bring their kids home and know that they will see the sun in the morning, not, disappear in a minute just because they are Ukrainians. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just returning back to the previous topic, I forgot to mention that reintegration of veterans is a huge opportunity for Ukrainians, because estimated we have 1.3 million people who are doing military right now. So, and this is huge opportunity for the country. And for example, in Aurora we have 69 veterans who already came back to the company, and there are so there are programs how to make it more smoothly and how to integrate them better, and this is huge potential. And also about SMEs, we have a special grant program for veterans, or for the second for the spouse. So, and it's a grant program, a smart money. So, and we have to deliver more smart money to veterans and to the people who are affected by the war. And regarding how to bring back people, so 80% people who left the country, they're actually women, right? And 80% of major reason is safety issue, because as Jana said, it's impossible to, you'd say in sober mind gonna bring kids to the country under missiles or something like that. So I think to ensure security is very important, and at least air defense. So this is, I think, 80% we can solve with proper air defense system in Ukraine. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Darina.
So, of course, I fully agree with my colleagues on the safety issue, but in principle, when speaking about the reasons to get back home, when the safety is in place, I would say that we see three different reasons to get home. First one is welfare. And of course, we understand that from the welfare point of view, we need to ensure that the people will have the individual housing, the decent earning. And of course, we understand all the challenges that we face with that, but this governmental strategy has in its to-do list both social housing issue, the housing sector reform in principle, and also we are doing a lot, and Ministry of Economy is a lead here to ensure that people have the labor, the job. The second major issue is the feeling Ukraine as a home. You know this. Each of us needs a home. And we understand that this feeling of being in Ukraine as at home is very important for millions of our citizens. And we are speaking now not only about those Ukrainians who fled Ukraine due to the full-scale invasion, but in our demographic strategy, we also target all those Ukrainians who we call foreign Ukrainians, that is diaspora, and diaspora is of Ukrainians is very big one. And the third important issue or factor to get back to Ukraine is the need to get self-realization from the career point of view. And we understand that as the country, we can provide very big opportunities for this, for the second and for the third reason, starting from now. Because look at Timothy. Timothy, sorry for having you as an example, not for the first time. But not always when living abroad you have the possibility to jump into the very high political position and to make immediate impact on the development of your country. And very often as a country we can provide huge career opportunities to Ukrainians. And if we are speaking about those Ukrainians who are living abroad, who feel the need to be to live, to have Ukraine in their mind, and who want to be successful from the career point of view, Ukraine is a very right place. And we understand that we need to talk that message very directly, and we need to talk this message with and through organizations of Ukrainian migrants abroad. Because we have Timothy, we have Mikhailo Vinnytsky as Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Education, who got Ukrainian citizenship to took this position. In our ministry, we have Irina Poslovska, who was staff member here for the World Bank here in Washington, and who gave up her job in Washington to join Ukrainian government at this period of war. And we have numerous examples of such people who took their decision to serve Ukraine and to make this on a very important positions. And we think that this part of the strategy should be developed.
Wonderful. And there are also foreigners, not only Ukrainians, that are also investing and building companies in Ukraine. And so the next panel will hear from some of those entrepreneurs who are not living fully in Ukraine but go back and forth, and they're not Ukrainians. So that's another area.
If I may just very short last message. Of course, we understand to deliver that message. and we understand the mechanics, logistics to deliver that message. And the question now that we will work on the partnership with different organizations of Ukrainian migrants to deliver that message, and probably to deliver some forms of cooperation with Ukrainians abroad in terms of providing information about vacancies available in Ukraine, and providing opportunities and having discussions with Ukrainian employers on the possibilities to hire people with the first distant period, remote period of work, with the further opportunity or commitment to relocate to Ukraine with their families.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria.
Yes, I know we're running out of time, so I'll just quickly, as you can probably tell, I'm the only non-Ukrainian on the panel. Maybe you can't tell, I don't know, but that I'm aware of, I don't have any Ukrainian blood. So they're being very humble, so I will speak about Ukrainian people and some of the strengths as well. I think the resilience of the people, the highest education levels in the world, highest digitalization levels in the world, strong family commitment, and I think what I'm getting at is tapping into some of that national identity, and pulling in what is it about being Ukrainian, and what does that mean to people worldwide. And there are some very interesting examples of how other communities, diaspora communities, have done that, doing study tours, sort of keeping that alive of what makes you Ukrainian, I think is going to be critical, because while we can attract and we want to attract back as many people as possible, if when EU integration happens, there may be massive migration out of Ukraine. There are shortages across Europe, labor shortages across Europe, so we need to be conscious of all of the population movements that are happening. Now climate change is impacting population movements globally, so what is that going to look like? So I think it's really holding on to what is Ukrainian and tapping into that. And I'll keep it at that for now, because I know we want to hear from Timothy.
Thank you, Maria. And we're running out of time. Maybe I'll give the last words to you, Timothy.
Thank you very much. So I think we have a program, Create Ukraine, jointly with the Ministry of Economy and Ukraine Moldova Fund, which actually provides scholarships for Ukrainians abroad to work at the government. Surprisingly, it has been a very successful program, and people want to come back and join. And I think there are lessons to be learned from that program. We are starting Create Ukraine 2.0 sometime this fall. What we have seen works is soft, more continuous, not 0-1 engagements. I am myself an example for that, who is for many years kept my position and continue to keep my position at the University of Pittsburgh, but was part-time in Ukraine, graduating into full-time engagement in Ukraine. At the same time, there are counterproductive policies in Ukraine which require, for example, people to be physically present, let's say at Ukrainian educational institutions or state-owned companies or in civil servants, and as a result they basically lose and quit the positions because they want to stay with children, let's say, abroad. Okay, and we're losing a lot of people that way. We need to address that. So then there is this question about what people are asking for to come back. I agree that safety is very important, but the surveys show that problem number one for people in the labor force is jobs. They want stability, continuity, very clear career path to come back. So if we can structure that, that would be a good answer. You asked about guilt. I think people get motivated by emotions rather than by rationality. Guilt is the only one actually out of negative emotions which create constructive change. Fear or anger will lead to the results we wouldn't want. But there are a lot of positive emotions that we can cultivate as a nation, from hope to pride to gratitude to empathy to altruism, and all of these emotions will engage people, so we have to be strategic about that. Finally, we have frameworks for organizations to be successful based on resilience and anti-fragility of Ukrainian ones. I have developed some, including what I call Marshall Trident. There's no time, it's exactly 3 p.m., so I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the participants and to the speakers. And we have a break now, so if you would like to engage with the speakers, please do so. We have, coffee outside. And another round of applause, please, for our great speakers.